Welcome to the Convergence Coaching Inspired Ideas podcast. Join us as we explore great leadership and management ideas that apply within the accounting profession and in other aspects of life and business too.
Welcome to episode 3 of Inspired Ideas podcast. My name is Tamera Loerzel, and I'm a partner with Convergence Coaching. And with me is Renee Mulders, my partner also. And we are here to explore anytime, anywhere work and the move to anytime, anywhere work. The train has left the station. And this is really a following of our initial launch of our podcast where Jennifer Wilson and I talked about the change imperative. And one of the things that we said is a must-have change that we need to be paying attention to in our firms is the move to anytime, anywhere work. We launched our 4th survey of anytime, anywhere work of almost 200 firms. 99% of the firms say that they have anywhere work, and 96% say they have anytime work. We're going to define that and look at what that means. But what I want to point out is for our listeners that most of you probably have some kind of flex program or some kind of anytime, anywhere work. And our hope for you in this session is that you can identify where you could take it to the next level, how you could further flex. And if we were to survey and interview your team, which we often do with future leaders, we find that they'll tell us, we're not certain that we really can take flex. Or we hear that people leave, they put in their notice because they didn't feel like they could take advantage of flex, or because they were moving and didn't know they could do remote. And so we find out last minute. And so what could we do to elevate that or make sure that it's appropriate and consistent for all employees across the firm? And for those of you that are maybe just dipping your toe in the water or you're chasing that train, we want to leave you with some ideas of what you can do next and really understand and take back to your leaders some of the changes that you need to be exploring in 2020. So with that, I'm going to ask Renee, why don't you define for us how we are defining anytime, anywhere work, and what does that mean, and how does that fit into this whole flexible work program?
Yeah, great question, Tamera, and great place to start. So anytime work is what we might call flexible work. It's where I have flexibility over the when of when I get the work accomplished. And so that might be being able to start later in the morning and stay later in the evening. That might be that I come to work until 3 o'clock and then I cut out because I want to go pick up my kids from the bus. And then I get back online later in the evening after dinner and do, the rest of the work I needed to get accomplished. It really gives people choices. Anytime work gives them choices over the when. And then anywhere work gives them choices over where they get the work done. And so that's remote work, that's virtual work, that's work from home. All those things are kind of wrapped up inside of that. And the idea there is you want to dictate as little as possible where and when people get the work done, because we want to give them that control and that opportunity to have work fit better with their life. And so anywhere work, if I need to stay home because my water heater's broken and someone's coming to fix it, I just get my work done from home that day. And so maybe it's that kind of one-off flexibility about where I get the work done or when I get the work done. Or sometimes it might be consistent. So I work every Thursday from home, or Mondays and Wednesdays because I'm in charge of getting kids to the bus and getting kids home from the bus. Whatever it is. And it's not really, I keep saying kids, but we would like you to think about anytime, anywhere work being for people in all kinds of situations. So maybe it's that I have personal things I want to take care of. I have appointments that I need personally. I have family members who need my assistance, not just my kids. So really, whatever it is, we're looking for that ability for people to have work fit better with their personal life.
Renee, I want to add one area, because you just said you were going through that list is long. But I think one thing we're seeing firms, especially in major cities, a reason to want to work from home is the commute. And just the time I get back for that commute. And I know I live in Minneapolis and we work from home, we're virtual. And when I have to go to the Minnesota State Society of CPAs and drive that freeway, it just feels so unproductive. And I think people choose their office location, based on where they work, and then they have to go out and visit clients or whatever. And that commute really can tie them down. So I think there's a whole list of reasons.
100%. Yes, you're totally right, Tamera. And you talked about how you work from home. I work from home too. So I wanted to also mention that we are 100% virtual, 100% flexible at Convergence Coaching. And so we do have times like today when Tamara and I are doing a podcast with Sarah and the three of us need to be on at the same time. But otherwise, we work really hard to allow employees to have choices over when they get the work done. And then also, we all work from our home offices and have been doing that for almost 20 years. So we do feel like we have some secret sauce. We've created some procedures and processes that have allowed us to be effective in this kind of environment. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast and in our next podcast too, which is going to be on remote work.
Well, so that's a really great segue. Let's talk about who do these programs apply to? We're talking about how we're working and how we're seeing different people take advantage of Flex. So I think one of the questions we get from firm leaders is, who's eligible for anytime, anywhere work? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think that's progressed and is progressing. It's really interesting in the survey data and also what we're hearing out there when we talk to our clients or in our leadership programs, the things that we're hearing. So I would say today, flexibility needs to be available for everyone. And, I think if we had an audience here, you would see their faces kind of, crinkle and they would say, well, hang on just a second. What about admin? How do we make that work? Well, we have to look at the duties and kind of peel out the things that have to happen on site. But I would say a majority of those duties, even answering the phone, by the way, can probably be handled from anywhere today based on the kind of phone systems that we're buying that we have. What about, and then someone's face might crinkle up and they would say, well, what about first year staff? They have to be in the office together. We have to see them, but not necessarily. And we're hearing firms who are offering this to their first year staff and even offering interns, maybe returning interns, like it might be the second year an intern comes to work for us, that we say, hey, do you want to, we know you're going to school this year, but how about you give us 10 hours a week from school and work remotely for us? You know our systems, you know how things work. So I think we would say it should be able to be applied to anyone. And we might have to be creative about for different roles what that looks like, or we might have to think about for different departments, so like if we have an M&A department or transaction advisory department, and they have to be on, all the time for clients, they may have a different kind of system. It might look different, but ultimately, everybody in the organization needs to feel like they have access to flexibility and that we're willing to talk about how to make flexibility work in every department, in every role. And I think the challenge is if you don't do that, Tamara, then you have competitors down the street that are. And so young people coming out of college are saying, well, my friends are taking jobs for these organizations and they have all this flexibility and all these benefits. I want those things too. And, we're going to talk about in just a second, the sort of the trends that are causing all of this. And I think that's one, is we're going to have to keep up because we are in a competitive marketplace for talent, for sure.
When you list all of the possibilities of what Flex could look like for people, we have to do a good job of setting expectations, a better job probably of setting expectations, because that's part of what causes those fears about training new people or about response time or about production. And so the better job we do of setting those expectations, I think the easier it becomes and people can get really comfortable with, it really isn't any different. We can use the technology, we can be responsive. We can schedule meetings like this. It's not like we don't ever meet,
Right.
But we're more intentional about it probably.
Well, and Tamara, we also have to be willing to wade in and talk about when it's not working. And we can be pretty conflict averse in public accounting and in consulting and maybe just human beings, like we're uncomfortable talking about the things that aren't working. And so we're going to have to be willing to talk about that, and getting good at it around flexible work and virtual work are going to help us be good at it in other places too, because ultimately it's just about workability. It's about making sure that we can be effective and efficient and we can talk about the stuff that's not working so we can fix it.
Yes. Awesome. So you touched on this idea that I can go down the street and experience these benefits. So I think that's one of the reasons why this continues to be such a hot topic and so important for firms to pay attention to and figure out how to navigate. So you were alluding to some other whys, or, why does this topic continue to be important? And what do you see about that?
Yeah. So we have this big generational transition that's happening. So that is part of it, that we had this big group of baby boomers, almost 80 million baby boomers. And we don't have 80 million Gen Xers. We have more like 50 million Gen Xers coming up behind those baby boomers. So different from other transitions in the past, it couldn't be this kind of one-to-one handoff. Baby boomers are headed out in the next 10 years and they turn around and say, we're going to hand it to you, Gen X. It doesn't really look like that. And so those millennials are elevating faster. We're having to elevate them in our organizations faster. And it's causing somewhat of a labor shortage. And so in a time of shortage, these people have market power. They have choices, they have control, they want to make decisions and be involved. And so that's one reason. They're saying, hey, we want these things. And my friends have it at these other organizations, and why aren't we doing that here? We also have the technology and the means to do it. And so I think that's like, those things come together, and people have been saying for a while, why come in? Like, why fight my way in when we're having a snowstorm in Boston? And maybe that's going to be a 3-hour commute because the snow and traffic. And instead I just say, hey, listen, I can do it from home. So I'm just going to do that. And so that's sort of been growing too, that we have that ability to do it. Firms are also seeing, Tamara, that it just is a great way to lock people in, to boost engagement, to strengthen that loyalty to the organization. And it certainly does that. I know we hear that all the time from people, that they are so impressed that their firm trusts them to do the right things and to get the work done no matter where or when they do it. They'll say, I'm just floored. I'm sort of like honored that my organization would offer that to me. And so, and then you see that too in the research, the Deloitte 2018 Millennial Study. There's a lot of discussion there about trust and respect and how important that is to people. Mm-hmm. So, just love this way that these types of programs allow people to feel like they're winning at home, in their personal lives, in their work lives, and they have those choices of, what they can do when.
Well, and I do think that's the way the world is going. Our school district just, we're talking about the snow in Boston. In Minnesota, we seem to have more cold than snow. And when we have school days now, we're doing remote school days, and the kids are expected to work, and they can access everything on Schoology. And I know it's one of the ways for the school district to manage the days off and the commitments that they have to make for the state requirements. And if they have kids turn in homework, it counts as school time. So the world is changing. I mean, I just see it in so many different places. And that poses challenges. Like, that's interesting, isn't it? Like, we could totally explore that. So what are some of those challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, well, it is a new way of operating, and it requires new management techniques. It requires us to have a different set of skills. So I think firms are realizing or waking up to the fact that they need to teach that to people. And you talked about, Tamara, the expectations. So this idea of also saying to people, this is a two-way street. Yes. And so sometimes, Tamara, in our consulting, we meet firms who are a little bit jaded or burned, and they feel like they're just giving on benefits and to their people, and they're not getting back. That's the feeling that leaders can have. And so, maybe usually when they're feeling that way, they need to go to expectations. Are we setting clear expectations? Because we still have to get the work done. We still have to have the production and the same amount of effort. And in almost all of these programs, there is one program that we might say is the less effort program, and that's called part-time. And all of the rest of these are just a shifting in when I'm getting it done or where I'm getting it done. So, sometimes firms have to go back and get more clear about that with everybody involved. We also have to have more intentionality, I would say, about how we communicate, in how we set expectations, and in how we interact with each other. So I know at Convergence Coaching, we really work on our trust of one another. and our positive interpretations, and when someone doesn't answer my phone call or isn't online when I need them, I could go off in my head and start interpreting that as, oh, they're doing their laundry, or, they're never available
They're
when
at the DMV this morning.
Well, or I could stop and say, well, hang on, positive interpretations, they might be on with the client, they might be deep in a project. And if if I have questions about it, if it's happening consistently, then we might need to come back together and talk about, the last couple of times I've tried to reach you, I haven't been available to. And I'm not sure if we've been clear about the expectations about when you're available. So let's talk about that. Yeah. So just being, having that trust for one another and really working on that, not just saying we trust each other, but working hard at it with intention, I think is really important.
I love that. So let's go a little bit deeper on this expectations idea, because I think one of the expectations, and it's this two-way street too, we do see that it doesn't feel like a two-way street, but we're not articulating that. We aren't really clear about that. And so on the expectations, one of the things we have to set expectations about and get really clear about ourselves as a leadership team, perhaps, is what are the non-negotiables? So how are firms defining, the expectations and setting, non-negotiables? Like what's changing, what's not changing by working anytime, anywhere?
That's a great point, Tamara. So we have to look for each person probably at the role. So first of all, at a high level, what am I going to be responsible for? If I'm going to be working from home now, let's say all the time, am I still going to be responsible for training my staff? Am I still going to be responsible for maintaining client relationships, interacting with my staff and managing them, checking in on how they're doing with their production and keeping up with things? So that all needs to be really clear in the expectations of what I'm responsible for. So then if my staff people are going off and asking other people questions about my jobs or taking up other people's time, that's one of the fears is I'm going to be left here at the office and you're at home. Great, you're really productive. And I get all the interruptions here in the office. And so we have to look at, well, are the expectations clear? That if my staff are going to other people, I need to say to them, hey, hang on, don't take those questions to Julie. She doesn't know the answer. You need to message me. I am me and I'll help you with it. And then as far as deal breakers, Tamara, it's also, we say we still have to be profitable. We still have to make the same amount of production. We still have to have those deep client relationships. That's a deal breaker. We have to continue to be related to one another and to lock our people in, so firms are really working hard at retention and hanging on to their people. And so if I'm a manager that is not touching base or is not building relationships with my people, we have to stop and talk about that, because it's our job to create those relationships and really Velcro those people into the organization. And the great thing about all of this, I think, is that it helps us be better in general at managing our people and managing our firms. We've really been managing pretty unintentionally, I think. And so this whole maybe challenge around or possibility around anytime, anywhere work is we get really good at this, and it's going to make us better in so many ways. And by the way, we haven't talked about, Tamara, it's going to make us be better at working across offices, because really that's virtual work, that's remote work. We should be using talent in other offices. And so we've got to figure this out. It's so important to really get clear about expectations and figure this out, because it's, like you said, the train's leaving the station or has left the station. It's coming for us. We can't run from it.
Well, so gosh, you just made me think of two things. So let's see if we can tackle them together. One is on relationships. And as we look at client service cannot be sacrificed. Client relationship cannot be sacrificed. I think one of the reasons or the whys to really embrace and empower anytime, anywhere work is because your next gen clients, are going to be looking for that. That's how they are going to operate. So, they don't necessarily want you coming out and doing the audit at their office if you really ask them. And not everybody, but there's a high percentage that we're having firms find. And, they don't want to come and do a tax meeting. They're like, why do I have to meet with you? You have my stuff. Let's do a quick Zoom call. Let's talk about it. Why are we doing meet face to face? And why am I sitting with you while you're doing, my tax preparation? So all of that is transforming. Yet you pointed to, we need to maintain the relationship. And that also points to culture. So it's one of the objections or challenges we see is how do I maintain that relationship both with my client and my team? And how do I really preserve and empower our culture in anytime, anywhere work, which is a big piece of it's that relationship like you talked about with the belonging. So what do you see about that?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great place to go. And it makes me think about Emily's blog that she wrote about 6 months ago. Emily on our team wrote a blog about culture, and she used the word intentionality. And so I think that's the theme is we have to be intentional about it. So we can't have a culture that happens by accident. And I would say we don't want a culture that happens by accident anyway. I really don't think we do. And so, but we're probably going to just have to look at different mechanisms or shifting our mechanisms, because maybe if we sort of made a list of the ways that we got together and were related to each other under the old model, and then say, what are we going to add or supplement, or even maybe stop doing some of these things under the old model and start doing some new ones under the new model? Because like for us, Tamara, we're rarely together. We see each other maybe out on the road at conferences or on engagements, but rarely does the whole team have the ability to get together in the flesh, three-dimensionally. But we get together all the time over video, on the phone. We're having our Christmas party tomorrow afternoon. We're going to play some games. We're going to wear silly hats and sweaters probably. We are going to learn some things about each other and talk about what's happening personally in our life for that party. And, we do baby showers like that. We do wedding showers like that. And we've crafted those. We've created those events. And I think organizations are going to need to create new types of events. If you have people that aren't so far flung as we are, then maybe you have them come in on a regular basis. Maybe you say like 4 times a year or 2 times a year, we're going to have all of our remote people show up here at the office for some sort of event so we can be together. And then adding in those virtual touches. And probably, I think, opportunities for everybody to be virtual. Because one of the things that's concerning me about this shift from where we are now to where we're going in the future is that in this in-between phase, those remote people, when everyone else is together and the remote people just dial in, it can feel a little bit lonely. Like I'm sitting here in my office and you guys are all together. And so maybe taking a few events a year that we all promise, let's just do it from our computer at home, or let's all go to our office and do it from there, which might sound silly, but let's just try it, because really it allows everybody to sort of have their time, not being in, 3-dimensional. Another idea I heard the other day was a managing partner does a regular, like a quarterly update to the whole team. And he travels around, and they're a multi-state firm. He travels from office to office. So every office has the opportunity to be the ones in the room with him when he does his update. So, sort of spreading the love around, I think, those touch points and those meeting locations. And those are all the big global things that we do, HR is going to do, or your fund committee is going to plan those. So that's one aspect. And then let's not forget those regular touch points between individuals. So huddles, we can hold short meetings over video or over the phone. Check-ins, like you would drop by somebody's desk and say, hey, how's your week going? What's happening with the Jones project? Instead, you pick up the phone, you turn on video, you IM someone, do you have 15 minutes? And you hop on and just check in with how things are going. So really keeping up those touch points and having that expectation for anyone in charge of engagements, anyone in charge of people, career managers, that they have to figure out, how do I stay related and in touch with my people? Because that's what's going to have us really stay connected and build that culture we really want to see.
And I think that everything you just said 100% applies to clients. Maintaining the relationship and, being intentional. And it's like, if I'm not sitting out in their office, we're not building that relationship with them. Well, we ask those people not to talk to the client and ask us to interact with the client, and I'm not even out there. And so we have to be intentional. I like that word, about creating those relationships.
Yeah. And Tamara, just one more thought on that. I don't know that we were always intentional in the past with those client relationships. I mean, we show up at the audit, we're sitting, maybe that's what you're saying, we're sitting in the conference room. That's not building the relationship.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
Yep, exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I think what we should share, Renee, is one of the critical success factors to really have anytime, anywhere work and our flex programs be successful is buy-in from leaders. So what can you leave our listeners with about how we can gain that buy-in and get more traction and top-down support of this anytime, anywhere work initiative?
Yeah. Well, number one, I would say is transparency. So let's be open and honest about how we're using flexibility at all levels. So if I have a dentist appointment in the middle of the day, I mark it as an appointment and people can see that. And they know I take advantage of flexibility just like everyone else does. And we can even, for those forward-thinking leaders, we can say to them, or maybe we should ask it of everyone, just pilot it. Just work one day a month from home during this next busy season so that you can learn the systems and you can give us feedback on what's working and what isn't working. And also you can be sort of that role model for it's okay to use flexibility, because there's no sense in having these programs if people feel like it's this career limiting move to take advantage of them. The second idea is just watching what we're saying. I think the power of the word and of the stories that we tell. And so watching sort of idle chatter about like, oh, she's working from home. Yeah, she's probably doing her laundry. Ha ha. Just being careful about those things that we say, because people pay attention to the stories that we tell. And if it looks like the stories are saying it's not okay to take advantage, your people will feel like it's not safe to use them. And the third idea I would say is to be a bystander, to start paying attention to where are people saying the wrong things or sending the wrong message, and just kindly pointing it out. I called it idle chatter because I don't think people are trying to be rude all the time or really being mean. They're just maybe being careless about their conversation. And so just pointing out, hey, I'm worried if you make that joke in the meeting, people are going to think it's not safe to use our programs. So, being willing to sort of pay attention to what's happening with conversation and point it out when you feel like it's not effective.
I love it. Perfect. And so that idle chatter, I wrote a blog on it called Sludge. So I called it Sludge, which is probably more the mean side of it. And we'll include that blog, and we have a couple other blogs that we will include and attach to this podcast. And if there's any other information you want about the survey or statistics, you can let us know that. And I think one of the leaving thoughts would be pilot one of these ideas. And
100%, Tamara. Just get started. Just try something, please.
Take a trusted employee, pilot remote. Don't let anybody leave the firm without having the ability to work remote. You lay your head down in the desk and cry. We're going to talk about that in our next podcast. So we'll go deep on remote and how to really manage that and make that effective. But pick one of these ideas, pick something, maybe take one client this year and let's not audit, let's do 50% of it virtual. You can go ahead and, stick a toe in or stick a foot in. So we are here to answer any questions. We are super passionate about this topic, having been virtual for almost 20 years. And so if you have questions as you're implementing these ideas, reach out to Renee or I. We're so glad that you were able to join us for this episode of the Inspired Ideas podcast. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Convergence Coaching Inspired Ideas podcast. Be sure to visit convergencecoaching.com to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Have an inspired day.